I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Somewhat in sync. All right. Roll call.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice?
Here.
Trustee Hauk?
Here.
Trustee Micus?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here.
All right. That brings us to approval of agenda. We just have one change on the agenda to make, and that would be the addition in presentations. And I guess we could have you guys do rock, paper, scissors on this, A, B, or C, but how quickly you have to get out the door?
Fairly fast. It's going to be short. So.
It's short. Why don't we, is there, if we shove him up to the top, make him A? All right, so we're going to be adding a presentation from Roger Hauk into item A, shifting Jim McBride, and then Braun Kendrick to items B and C. We have a second on that.
Second.
All in favor of the changes to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ben made the motion.
All right, looking at the rest of the agenda, I'm assuming everything's fine. So we'd move on to that item. Then this would be item 5, and so we would bring up Roger Hauk.
Yeah, thank you. Roger Hauk, 1682 South Bamber. I'm just coming to thank you for all the help you did on getting the turn signal on the corner of Isabella and Pickard, or 20. I worked at Delfield for 24 years. When everybody got out of work, it was a pain to make a turn off Isabella either way, onto the left. And the good thing about it is now people don't basically have to break the law. Because if you sit there and watch, there'd be like 3 cars would go on the yellow and 2 would go on the red. So we're basically, making our citizens to break the law in order to turn. And I just think it's a good indication how groups can work together to get something to go. I talked to MDOT, and they said they needed a traffic study, and I called Mark, and he checked with the board, and I really appreciate you guys doing that and getting it done. I think it'll be a good help to the traffic flow, especially that way it seems like the traffic's flowing even more. So I just stopped to say thank you.
Well, I had about a dozen Delfield workers in this week, so I was able to give them the welcome news, and they were all very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So be happy on where Jamison Park is too, because a lot of people cut that way. That is it Bud Drive? Yeah. They take that drive to go around. So it's good. But again, thank you so much for calling the call when I called to ask to do the traffic study. And surprisingly, MDOT came through.
Yeah. Thank you. It goes both ways, Roger. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Roger.
Was that quick enough?
Yeah. Was it for you guys?
All right, that moves us on to item B, which was originally item A, and this is going to be Jim McBride, and this is President and CEO of Middle Michigan Development Corporation for his annual report.
Great. Yeah, let me pass these out.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for
There you go.
letting me come before you. Just want to go over our annual report here a little bit. We updated our mission and vision statement here on the left. Didn't change drastically, but this is for the next 3 years, and our mission continues to be to grow our economy. We work, really focused on retention and growth of our current businesses. We also do attraction, but our priority is taking care of the businesses that are already here. We do have our speaker series, and I don't know if all of you are on our mailing list. If you're not, I want to get you on the mailing list, but we do these quarterly breakfasts, and they're very good. I mean, we do a free breakfast. We rotate them between our 2 counties that we serve, Isabella and Clare County. So we're typically at the Doherty in January and July, and then at Mountain Town Station in April and October. So if you're not getting those, please let me know, and I'll make sure you're on the mailing list. The metrics for 2018 are right here in this orange box. We had over $34 million invested by the companies that we work with. over $569,000 in grants received by the companies, 299 new hires in the 2 counties, 157 company visits, and 302 company assists. So this would mean that there would be more than 1 assist per company or per company visits. We might have 2 or 3 in some cases doing different things for the companies. Flip over. These next 2 pages, you know, for anybody that lives here, you know, they know all about Central Michigan University or Mid-Michigan College. You know about the quality of life that we have here in this part of the state, but people who are not from this area don't know. And we also use our annual report as a marketing tool. So when people want to know about this area, this is one of the documents we give them so that they can look on these 2 pages and find out a little bit more about us. And this is a great place to live, work, and play. So that's what these 2 pages are for. This is actually requested. We had site selectors say, hey, you really need to include some information about the area, you know, in your annual report. So that's why we did these 2 pages. We did them last year too, and got great reactions, so we're continuing that. We just updated the President Davies picture from President Ross. Next page over, now, you know, and I really try to focus on Union Township. I know that this is in the city, but we have a lot of employees who live in the township who work at American Mitsuba. And just a little quick story about what we were facing with this. American Mitsuba, as you probably know, makes parts for Honda and other Japanese makes. They make electric motors for windshield wipers, for windshield wipers, electric windows, and for power, for pumps and so on within the car. And so Honda's their biggest customer, but they make parts for other Japanese companies besides them. But they recently got a contract with Broza to do parts for Ford and BMW. So in order to expand and take on these new customers, they were going to have to add about 45 new jobs and a whole new assembly process and a new press. Well, they have 2 factories. They've got the one here in Mount Pleasant, and they have one down in Bardstown, Kentucky. So we pitched really hard. We worked very closely with them. Last year I made more calls on this company than any other company. And we got the MEDC involved. And we really were able to trigger the business development program and write a check out of the state of Michigan for $360,000 to American Mitsuba to help close the gap, because what we were facing was in Bardstown, Kentucky, they were not going to have to reconfigure the building. They were going to have to do that here. So the building in Bardstown, they had excess capacity, whereas here they're going to have to bump out the back of the building, make a whole new area for the new press, and reconfigure the floor, which they're already in process of doing after they receive this. So this check really didn't close the gap entirely, but it helped. And then with an abatement, we were able to partially close that gap, and they made the decision to stay here. Also acknowledging the high quality of our local workforce here. So we were very happy to get that. It's 45 new jobs in the area when that all rolls in. And so, in fact, what I do sometimes is if I'm talking to a group with a lot of CMU professors or students, I ask them, show me hands, true or false. Within the very near future, we're going to be producing parts for BMW on the campus of CMU. Like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. No, but it's actually a true statement because they're located in the smart zone. So, even though, like I say, that's a city Mount Pleasant issue, it affects you locally here because you have a lot of people who work there. Other local abatements that we've done 3 of them in Broomfield Township. So this is the process. We've done one here with Birch Tank. This is the process that we walked through, and so we tried to do a little primer here in the next 2 pages and how that works. A couple other things to mention. $2.6 million with the Marshall Plan, and real briefly on that, so there are about 90 applicants statewide for the Marshall Plan last year. We were part of 2 of them here. Out of the 90 applicants, I was involved with the Gratiot-Isabella one and also the Claire Gladwin one. Now, it had to be a school district. We couldn't apply, company couldn't apply. It had to be a school district that applied for this because it's money that goes to the school district so they can hire career counselors and also do some innovative things with the students. So the Claire Gladwin proposal, and I was the convener of that one. They were gonna go ahead and hire their school counselors, career counselors, but they were also going to put in place a certification process so that when students go through this program in Claire Gladwin, they can graduate with a high school degree, but also be certified as an auto mechanic or a diesel mechanic. So they can go right to work for, a job in that area. In Gratiot Isabella, it's all about workplace ethics and workplace quality in terms of helping students understand what it's like to be successful in the workplace, getting there on time, making sure that you are ready to go to work and can pass a drug test and all those kinds of things. And so that's a focus in Gratiot Isabella. But in both cases, they have these career counselors now that have already been hired and are going to be on staff, because part of the problem with the schools is it's about a 750 to 1 ratio right now with school counselors that are there working with students on everything from girlfriend problems, boyfriend problems, problems at home, and if the counselor knows anything about the local business opportunities or career opportunities, they never have a chance to get to it, and that's if they know about it. The career counselors are only going to be able to talk to students about career opportunities, and they're going to be required to meet with each and every student in the school districts and come up with some sort of a career plan, meet with students and their parents. I think it's going to be a great thing as we go forward to help our students be better prepared for the workplace. So that's $2.6 million coming into the local area, and we were one of, or 9 out of the 990 statewide were there were 9 winners and 2 of them were here in this area, so we were very happy with that. Just a couple other quick things. We received a $100,000 grant from the MEDC to hire Brian Roberts to not only work in Isabella and Clare counties, but also in 3 other counties in the area to help our companies be better prepared for homeland security and defense contracting opportunities. A lot of our companies right now are maxed out, and they're trying to fill orders, and they're trying to keep people. We're virtually 0 unemployment in the area, so we've got our companies kind of maxed out. But that's not going to last forever, and there's our economy cycles, and we're trying to get out there now and let companies know about the opportunities for defense contracting and homeland security contracting. So we've been very well received with this, and companies really appreciate knowing more about this. They're interested, they're pursuing it, and I think we're going to see many companies in the area pursue contracts in these areas. So that's a new initiative. And again, that was he's really a contract employee with the MEDC working under me. And we've got several other things in the next few pages. Want to point out the Birch Tank expansion and thank you for approving that abatement last year. If you have had a chance to tour that, it's great. I was just over there earlier this week. This is the unit that they put in, this laser, largest fiber cutter in the Midwest. It's humongous. And not only is it available for Birch Tank, but they are farming that out for other people that need to use that unit. They can contact Jeff Harrison over at Birch Tank and use it. So it's something that is really enhancing the area. And then I want to mention one other thing here. I think at the last time I talked with you, I mentioned the study that we had done with Greater Gratiot that we submitted to MDOT about US 127 and improving that 16-mile stretch between Ithaca and St. John's. It's not full expressway. And one of the things that we pointed out that with the current highway there were some of the most dangerous intersections in the state of Michigan, which was actually true. The Bagley Road being the most dangerous, and in January there were 3 different fatal accidents in 1 month. And so between the study and those fatalities, MDOT decided to close Bagley Road, and if you've driven 127, you've seen that as you've driven north, that's now closed, so thank God. So we did put that on there. We feel that we had something to do with that as well. So that's just a few of the highlights. We've got all of our sponsors and our clients and our board, and Mark is a great member of our board too, and he provides a lot of input for us, and we appreciate his involvement with our board. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an update and see if you have any questions. All right, cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, have a good evening.
Thanks, Jim.
If I
Thank
can make
you.
one,
wait,
one
Jim.
comment related to
Yeah,
this. Not a question, but I just want to acknowledge the Board of Trustees. The Union Township Board has been partnering with Mid-Michigan Development Corp. for, as best I can tell, since at least 2005. And you make a $10,000 a year appropriation in support of that organization. And that, that shows your commitment to the economic development that goes on in the region. And then just earlier this month, I guess, the EDA voted to make an annual contribution of $5,000 to the MMDC as well to help with, because they need resources to do their job.
Wasn't it 5,000 additional?
Yeah,
It
5,000
was-
more.
Yeah, it's $15,000 total. Yeah.
And
We
so I wanted to
really-
mention
We
that.
greatly appreciate it. Yeah, we greatly appreciate it. It helps fund our operations, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in growth, and I think we're going to see a lot of growth in Union Township. So we appreciate that additional support.
And then I do also want to mention that Mr. McBride has a seat on the MEDC, which is really important to have, and we're very lucky to have that local representation on that state board. Thank you.
Just down there yesterday for most of the day.
And then, Jim, you're still Lions Club?
No, I'm on Rotary. I'm in Rotary.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought you were Lions Club a long
I was at
time.
Lions Club years ago, yes.
I was going to remind everybody, chicken barbecue, May 9th.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, they're trying to get me back in Lions Club right now. One at a time.
Why not?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
And Mark, thank you for taking your time to be on the board. That certainly
Yeah.
gives us a direct conduit to what
Yeah.
MMDC's up to. And
I enjoy
valuable.
that board.
All right, and that brings us to item C. And this is our new introduction to our Braun and Kendrick representatives, and this would be Eric Morris, and is it Pusker or Pusker?
You're never going to get it.
Puska?
Pushkar.
Pushkar.
That's the absent
Where's the
H?
H?
Yeah, it's absent. And,
Why don't I just go ahead and add the H in?
feel free.
I'm supervisor, so I can do that.
So I
Officially,
No,
officially
quite.
H now.
I had sent out a note to the board, I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Matt Tarrant, who was one of our lead attorneys, is enlisted in the Air Force to, I guess, work for their legal unit. And so he's no longer here. Gary Gudmundson, who you may have seen once or twice in the past, he'd left the organization, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. Tim Curtis is still the lead from Braun on this account. And I just wanted to have Dave and Eric come up, introduce themselves, so if we ever end up in a closed session or something, you will have met them before that time. We've worked with Eric once before about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. He helped with the negotiations of the CBA. So,
Well, thank you,
Gentlemen.
Mark, and I appreciate the opportunity we both do to come and meet with everybody. Certainly, it's nice to meet you on good terms here, as opposed to discussing maybe an unpleasant issue for the first time. My name's Dave Pushkar. I've been with Braun Kendrick for a little over 10 years. Been a partner there last 3.5, and on our executive committee, which is kind of like our board that manages the firm, for the last 2.5 years. My background is almost exclusively litigation based, so a lot of the court work that Matt was doing for everyone for the township.
I don't know how to respond to that.
I'm glad to see I struck a nerve.
That was great. Good timing.
At least it wasn't my fault. That's the role that I would take on and will take on for the township here. Both state and federal court work I've done in the past, and municipal and work for folks opposite of municipalities as well. So I've got some experience on both sides of those issues, which I think can be valuable when you're kind of trying to look at an issue from the bigger picture. You know, on a personal note, I live in Freeland, not too far away, with my wife and three boys. So, and I'm a CMU grad, so I see the state shirt there, but nonetheless, I assume I'm among friends here, so it's nice to meet everybody, and Eric, you want to say a few things about?
Yeah, my name is Eric Morris. I've been an attorney at Braun Kendrick for about 2 years now. I have worked with the township pretty much since I started in various capacities, but most notably working on the collective bargaining agreement, which is due to expire at the end of the year. So I appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with you guys. I do primarily labor and employment and general municipal stuff. So I have, work with a number of municipal clients around in our area. My background is in transactional work, so I've worked primarily in the corporate and municipal setting. Prior to coming to Braun Kendrick, I was down south. I practiced law in Alabama for 7 years, and I'm originally from Saginaw, so that's why I returned home. So again, appreciate the opportunity to continue working with you. If you have questions or concerns about, like I said, general labor and employment, which is frequent concern, and municipal governance and things like that, that's primarily what I'll be helping serve you.
I know you haven't seen my name too much before, or maybe ever, but Matt was kitty corner to me in the office, and I'm certainly familiar with a number of your matters and things. We would regularly bounce things off each other. So, we're sad to have see him go, but I think as far as the transition goes, we're ready to step in and help you out. And as Mark said, Tim is also remains available and around. So, if anybody's had any questions, we're happy to answer. But otherwise, thank you for the opportunity, and we'll obviously be in touch.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yep.
Mm.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, everyone.
All right, that brings us to item 7, public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. Do we have anybody hiding that wants to come in and do public comments? Do not see any, so we close public comment at this point in time. We move to item 8, reports and board comments. I believe the only position that we're staring at right now is going to be EDA, I believe. Cheryl Hunter and Marty Figg's already been reaffirmed, so I think we're just looking at Cheryl Hunter. I reached out to her already. I think otherwise we've got, for the most part, our boards are pretty well set, aren't they?
Yeah, you're all full then till 12/31/19.
We have a vacant seat on the Sustainability Committee, it looks like. So we do need to find somebody that's willing to fill that seat, and that's what, a 2-year appointment, so that would be at 12/31/2020. Phil, have you had any contact with anybody that has any interest in that position at all?
Not any additional candidates yet, Ben.
Are you out there beating the weeds and?
Actually, the weeds and the waterways and every place.
Nothing, okay. So we all gotta keep our eyes and ears open for that position then. Otherwise, we move on to Planning Commission and ZBA updates, and this is gonna be our Township Planner, Peter Gallinet.
Good evening, board.
Is it Gallinet or Gallinet? Is it
Gallinet.
silent? It's Gallinet?
Yep.
Okay.
So
You're kinda
the
like that
planning-
H on Mr. Pushkar then, aren't you? Okay.
So the planning commission, we met last week and we had 3 items. The first was a rezoning application on 5115 Stirrup Drive. That application will be making its way to one of your board meetings here in the near future. It's basically a rezoning from R5 to R2B. The applicant desires that if the rezoning is successful, that they would apply for a special use permit for a Greek daycare home in Copper Estates neighborhood. The Planning Commission made a favorable recommendation to adopt. We also had a McDonald's site plan amendment. Previous Planning Commission meeting, we approved a site plan for McDonald's at 1963 East Remus Road, just down the road here on the corner of Lincoln and Remus. Since that time, they amended the site plan to remove 3 parking spaces. The plan still meets the minimum parking requirement. They again asked for provisional relief from sidewalk construction on Remus Road. And again, the Planning Commission denied that request for provisional relief. The McDonald's is seeking a variance next week at our May ZBA meeting to seek relief from placing a sidewalk along Lincoln Road. Our last item of the Planning Commission was a special use permit amendment. It's to an existing special use permit for the self-storage buildings we have at 1982 Remus Road. We have there's an existing open special use permit amendment that's on hold now. That application called for a expansion of self-storage units to the north. This special use permit amendment is for an expansion to the south. If you recall, previously the township recently adopted a rezoning change of property that was R3A. We rezoned it to B5, and so now the applicant is seeking the special use permit to expand the self-storage units on that property that is now zoned B5 instead of R3A. At the ZBA meeting, we did have one item. It was for a parking area setback. It's for a upcoming medical office, Dr. Joseph Yakison, I believe. He will be building a medical facility on the corner of 2nd Street and Pickard Road, 5316 East Pickard Road address. A site plan was approved for that project on the condition that a variance for the parking area setback be granted, and the ZBA granted that variance at our April meeting. So that's what we've been up to.
Peter, I got a question for you.
Sure.
We had, the Planning Commission, we had I think it was a special use permit that we had looked at last year on a park and sell over on North Mission. Is that gonna be resubmitted, do you believe, or is that?
At this time, the original plan was for a park and sell operation on the parcel, and that would be a special use. At this time, it's still on hold. We haven't approved any kind of site plan. The owner is looking at actually adding more than just a park and sell. And so when those changes are made and proposed, we'll review that site plan with both the special use and the any other uses that they're looking at. So
Okay.
as of now, there is no approved site plan or any development. It's all on hold.
Okay. Any more questions for Peter at all? All right. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Let's do board member reports now. Norm, you want to head it off?
Yeah, I have nothing to report tonight.
Nothing?
No.
Nada? Lisa?
At the last city meeting, they did a proclamation recognizing Greeks Clean the Streets, presentation recognizing Mount Pleasant Citizens Academy participants. Jim McBride came and did his presentation, and then there was a presentation on the 2020-2025 capital improvement plan. They approved a resolution authorizing a contract between consumers switching out the Cooper lights to LED. I think that's about it. They're working on their master plan. Went to that meeting. They had a lot of feedback, a lot of people coming in and making comments and stuff on that. That was at the last one.
And the road diet wasn't on this one, was it?
What
That's
one?
coming up, the road diet?
Pickard,
On
Pickard.
Pickard over by
Pickard, going down
post
to-
office
the
there.
one near
No.
Pickard.
No, that wasn't.
That wasn't on there?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I think they have a public input meeting scheduled May 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Tim?
Hi, Ben. I did attend a couple meetings, pretty good meetings, actually. First one was April 16th with the Isabella County Board of Commissioners. They have set their agenda for their year 2020 budget calendar, as we will be doing for ours. There was discussion about the county's increase of real and personal property taxes. They have realized about $154,000 increase over the prior year in real and personal property taxes. It is indicated that 40% of that increase is a result of 36 windmills out of Cole Township. So the folks that are pro-wind energy, certainly are pleased with that information. And there was also a little discussion of the jail ad hoc committee, discussion that they're having, preliminary discussion as they move to come to a decision about a jail construction. As they talked about, they need to work on selecting a project manager. They indicate that they believe they would like to have a parcel of property no less than 30 acres, which in turn leads them to believe there's no real reasonable thought that they could remain in their current location. Also attended the MTA Isabella County Chapter's quarterly meeting, and that's pretty interesting, and there's actually a little bit of action item that they're asking for us to do. State Rep Roger Hauk was there. He spoke briefly, mentioned fuel taxes for roads, indicated there's no real progress going on as far as the implementation of maybe a tax. Talked about his continued work regarding no-fault insurance for Michigan. As it stated, Michigan has the highest auto insurance. I saw something recently on that, talking about getting rid of no-fault insurance, but the other concern is, will there be a reduction in cost, or are we just going to potentially lose the great medical benefit that currently comes with that? So that's an interesting take, I thought. And there was discussion, and Mark had sent something to all of us, I believe. Mark, you sent it out. There's a question out there, information gathering, about if townships want to continue or would like to discontinue in the elections, becoming a nonpartisan type election. And it sounds to me like in this information gathering that it wouldn't necessarily be a statewide decision. It could be jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I always thought it was interesting that the sheriff would run partisan. That seemed interesting to me. But so in our group of the townships that were there and represented it seemed like the if not unanimous majority, the vast majority didn't feel that a nonpartisan ballot would be supported. But the MTA is looking for a response from each township collectively as to taking a straw poll of how each of the township boards feels or believes that they view that issue. So, I'm not sure if we are all on the email list for the MTA quarterly group. So the chair of that committee has asked that we get our emails down. Maybe Mark could gather our emails and get those sent over to John Pedchuk, and I'm gonna guess maybe you have his email. If you don't, I have it here for you. But just to assure that we are all being communicated by that group. I know we don't have too many of us that attend that meeting, as well as the monthly meetings that take place that are not the MTA, but just the town.
Those are like coincide, like there's one tonight that's exactly the same time as our meeting, right? It seems like they fall on Wednesdays.
They do, they're always the third Wednesday.
Yeah.
So they are not on our typical board night.
Yeah, it's like, every once in a while, right? Yeah, like I think tonight it happened to be that because I saw the meeting and I was gonna go to it, but then it's tonight.
Okay,
Pretty sure, yeah.
and so that's about the reports on meetings I attended. Just looking at the agenda, I note that I believe on the consent agenda maybe should include the manager's monthly activity report, which I could save this for later comment, but just, I think I will. I'll save that for discussion, final board comments.
Tim, did you feel that, did they give you any idea, I mean, I guess the question would be, is the nonpartisan elections, how that would look? I guess that's the question I would have, it's hard to make a judgment on that without knowing how the function would work.
Well, probably the thing that was stated strongest, that would be a change was, now your name's gonna be on the bottom of the ballot, running nonpartisan. Yeah, I think with our educated voters and our election operations, but how it would look, I guess just that, people
Just be
running
mass, you could have
for-
like 10 people all running for the same, like say for whatever individual office.
Yeah, they
There's
didn't
no way
really,
to pare it
I'm
down.
not sure if, what it probably would do is potentially increase the number of candidates running for a position.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think their idea is that it would have voters base their vote on merit and on, the overall ability of the individual rather than the party lines, which has some merit. But I think on the other hand, it would be pretty confusing and non-standardized to have one community going one way in terms of partisan, next community not. So it becomes very hard for the voter. And the fact that we've had the R's and D's for all these years, people have come to be accustomed to that. And I think that takes on a lot of consideration, because I think people with that have a sense of certain values that person might carry. But when you talk about the merit and the and the most qualified, there's some merit to that. And the other thing about it is that makes people do their homework more, that you're not just voting on the R or the D, you're voting on the individual, so you'd have to do your homework on it. I gave some consideration to that because that was floating around from the email we had gotten from Mark as well. And my sense is that, regardless of party affiliation, we all operate in a nonpartisan way when it comes to local politics. That's just the way it is. And I think that when we look at it, all our decisions are always based on things that are fact-based, meets the certain merits. We base it on the master plan, zoning ordinances, the community needs, etc. So, and we do that without any bias or prejudice, and we do it in terms of what's in the best interest of the community. We do it in terms of looking at what's fair and what's just for every individual. So it's across the board. I think on a local level, we're already doing that. So I don't see switching this around would make a whole lot of difference in the organizational or the governmental structure of what we do. I think it would probably confuse the voters more at the end of the day. So. Yeah, but it is good that we consider it, because I think there was also something about this was going to come up. You had to return this information to the MTA by 4:30 of this month, by April 30th. in terms of where we stand with it. But ultimately, I think this would go to a referendum and voters would decide that. That wouldn't be for boards to come up with, well, we're going to have a nonpartisan ballot. I mean, I think that ultimately that would come up for a vote. But the MTA wants to know where we're leaning in terms of that as a
It's
choice.
just out there,
Yeah.
from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah. It came out too, I think, in 2012. It came out at that point too, and it was soundly defeated by the MTA. But it's come up again by a certain representative to be questioning if that's something we should be considering. So, but it's good that you brought that up. I think it's
And there was that list of pros and
correct.
cons
Correct.
for everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, you can make a case either way, but I think people are definitely leaning towards the traditional, the conventional, what we're accustomed to, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, yeah.
Well, the email I sent out on this subject, and it's up to the board, my question was, do you want this item as an action item on your next board meeting? And the question before you that MTA is looking for an answer for is, for instance, is this board in favor of a change in the state law that would allow nonpartisan elections of township officials or not? And they're trying to get a sense of what the township's positions are throughout the state. And so if you want to have a position on it, whether it's, and the legislation's permissive, by the way, as it's written right now. If the board wants to have a position on it, either supporting it or not supporting it, then you need to do that via action of the board. You don't have to take a position. You don't have to inform MTA one way or the other what this board's preference is. But if you do want it on the next agenda, let me know and I'll make sure it's there for your deliberation.
I think we should have a voice, one way or the other. Straw poll here, but I think it should be on there. I think we should not leave it up to others. I think we should have a voice in that decision.
I don't see any reason not to work with our state MTA group and
Yeah,
try and provide information.
exactly.
Perspective.
Yeah.
And that deadline was extended, so
Okay.
I forget exactly. It's
May
about
15th.
May 15th, yes. Timings.
So we'll have that on your agenda next meeting, so then you
Thank
can
you.
formally deliberate it and you don't have to discuss it tonight.
All right. All set, Tim?
Yes.
Any questions for Tim at all? Good.
Ben, I don't have a report for tonight.
Okay. Mr. Howe?
I went to a road commission meeting April 11th. We talked about gravel roads starting. They're gonna start those projects up. Every township's doing 2 to 4 miles. There's many bridge projects going on. Tony was saying, the manager of the road commission, Tony Casale, was saying that there's at least 10 bridge projects going on in Isabella County that they're funded for. They talked about Isabella Road. They said that that's gonna be a late summer project. They're working on easements for that. I saw a guy out today, I'm not sure if that's what he was doing, but they were out on the corner of Isabella and Broomfield. They were doing some surveying out there today. I'm not sure if that's what it was for, but they're gonna start working on that. And then they figured the Lincoln Road extended to Broomfield Road. That Lincoln Road Broomfield project will start in July, and they're working on the final easements for that. So that's all I have.
Bill, you mentioned about the gravel roads. We had the Mulberry. Turns out that it's not under our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So there's an eighth of a mile that we had set aside for them of a quarter that we had left in the overall 2 miles that were allotted for us to pick. I don't know if there's a time to bring it out, but I think we're talking about the road commission. If it's not too late, I would suggest that perhaps we could still use that quarter mile and go back to, is it too late?
It's we already did, yeah.
Okay.
Right, I mean, it's to the highway now.
To do
Right.
Isabella to the highway?
That's what-
Okay, perfect, that's what I
Why,
was,
why isn't Mulberry, isn't that in the township?
It
No.
got turned over to the
To the
city.
city.
yeah.
Like, right after that road commission meeting, Jim Paul said to me, he goes, "Where's Mulberry Lane at, or Mulberry Drive?" And he said, I said, "Well, let's drive over there." So I was gonna ride over with him, and Pat Gaffney heard us talking, and Pat said, "Hey, that's not a township road anymore."
Right.
He said that got turned over to the city about 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have utilities on that road, don't we? We have a lift station and,
We have a lift station at the end of it.
yeah, but don't we have
Doesn't
water
matter.
and sewer on that road too? We have
We
to.
still have our easements.
Okay, all right.
That,
That's
But it
bizarre.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
that doesn't matter.
But
Yeah.
that's good, Mark, so then, that,
Huh.
I was thinking the same thing, trying to use that quarter mile for that part of the Isabella Road, so you've already discussed that with.
Yeah, I just,
Perfect.
with Bill, we were communicating the day after this board
Yeah, well,
meeting.
Mark sent an email.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
That would be that other quarter of a mile.
yeah, perfect.
Interesting. Great.
So that finishes that whole stretch then
Mhm.
of Isabel, because we were only going to the, from Wing East for the half mile. This now goes from Wing to the,
To the highway.
yeah,
To the dead end, yeah.
to the dead end.
Tom Trasher's old house.
Right.
Yeah,
Millbrook
that's
to the
actually,
highway.
yeah, that'd be actually north, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did have it stopping at the railroad.
Yeah,
track,
yeah.
not Going up to the
Yeah.
highway.
Gotcha,
All right.
perfect.
All right. Any more questions for Bill? All right. Yeah.
Delinquent personal property taxes, some mailings went out, in that this week. There are, going to be some certified ones going out soon. So that's it there.
All right.
Excellent, thank you.
EDA, nothing really outstanding happening with the presentation from Jim, and we did approve an increase in our monetary contribution to NMDC, additional $5,000. So we are contributing 15, so township-wise, we're $25,000 committed, I believe, right? 10,000 from the township at large and 15 from the EDA.
5 from the EDA. And
Okay,
10 has been going on from the Township General Fund for a number of years.
okay,
EDA is now, starting this year, going to make an annual contribution of $5,000.
okay.
So the total from the township writ large is
15,
$15,000 a year.
gotcha, all right. All right, so let's move on to consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
And then who approved the payables?
I did, everything looked okay.
Okay. And then, let's see, Tim, you were mentioning something about the Global Lens needing to be in the consent agenda?
No, Mark's monthly activity report.
Oh, activity
is
report, okay.
included, but it's not really noted on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. And we are on to item 10, new business. Discussion action, policy governance 3.4, agenda planning. Mark?
So this policy is titled Agenda Planning. The purpose of the policy, as I read it, is to ensure that the board has a process that it follows as it contemplates its annual review of the ends that are articulated in the policy. The policy also speaks about promoting board training and continuing education of board members. And so that's kind of the overall purpose or statements contained in the policy. And this is an opportunity for the board to reflect on how it's doing in terms of adherence to the policy. For instance, are you budgeting money for training? Are you sending folks to training? And or continuing ed, I think, is probably a better term. Do you review your ends annually, because that kind of sets up the budget cycle, and I believe that you do, but this is a discussion for the board.
All right, anyone would like to lead us off on this?
Well, I'd lead off with a question about our ends. You know, last meeting or the meeting before, we discussed looking at our ends, and we were gonna maybe schedule a meeting to do that. I just wanted to know what the status of that was, so I could, you know, consider my calendar and meeting any of those schedules.
And so at that meeting, we talked about late April, early May timeframe, and I do have sort of it penciled in right now. The agenda for May, for the first meeting in May, is pretty light, so we might be able to hold that during a Wednesday night meeting, so it didn't take up any additional time. And so I'm trying to keep that agenda light. There are a couple items on it already, but that's what I'm shooting for. And
Perfect.
as soon as that's verified, I'd send out that note to everybody.
Okay.
But understanding everybody's schedule and all that, and your preferences, and you do have your own lives, ideally I'd like to do it on a board meeting night, because that's already on your calendar.
Tim, would you like to?
Yeah, I guess, so, going through these monitoring reports really is at the heart, I believe, of what the function of this board is needing to talk about and consider. In this background information, talks about is this Board of Trustees focusing on the long-term organizational outputs along with the discharge of the fiduciary responsibilities. I think we certainly consider regularly, you know, the fiduciary position, responsibilities. A lot of places to spend money, lots only so big, so we try to do our best to make sure we consider what our owners are looking for, who the benefit is, how it's received by what segments, and try to make sure that we are fair and equitable as we discharge money for programs. I think maybe an area where the board is not as involved as maybe we should be is actually setting agendas, what the items are on the agenda. As the leaders, we need to be regularly bringing items up for the agenda so we can do our job and look into the future. And we do offer educational and informational opportunities, conferences for the board to attend.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I'll be spending the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday of this week, at the Policy Governance Boot Camp. So I was pleased that to have the opportunity of that. That's the policy we operate this board from, so you know, I certainly wanted to have that opportunity because I was able to work it out with work and make it happen. And Mark is also attending that as well. I don't know if anybody else signed up for that or not. And, but I think so my final comment would be, I think we should really look at our monitoring reports, and that's where a lot of discussion at this board should be taking place.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Norm?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I certainly concur. I think we, my sense is I think we overall do a pretty decent job with it. I liked when we first started, we had some very specific goals that we set up from the get-go. And that was based on, for many of us, on our campaigning, talking to residents, and we had talked about owner linkage. That's about as good as it gets. That's grassroots, you know, it gets right down there. I'd like to see more of that. But we do discuss our goals on a yearly basis, but I'd like to maybe do that with more specificity like we did earlier on in our tenure. Also, I think as a board, we regularly do end up discussing these items. So there's, you know, we're reviewing our policy governance policies. We're discussing the items. We look at needs assessments. We're looking at, you know, what the residents are wanting. You know, a few little examples would be, big examples. One would be when the issue with the Deerfield Road and the condition that was in the 2-mile stretch. And, you know, residents came in, they spoke about the concerns that they had with the road. It was a limestone, so it was gonna be more costly, but we found a way to set aside that money and to get that job done. People from O'Connor came in, you know, after that drastic flooding that they endured, you know, whereas we didn't solve all the problems because we couldn't, but we certainly, you know, looked at the drain in that area. We looked at the change in the culverts, you know, so we tried to be more in tune to what they were asking for. We're still waiting now on our water study. I heard that constantly out in the community about the water, particularly in terms of hardness and the calcium. And I think we're waiting for that water study in conjunction with Mount Pleasant. I think that all the efforts we all make as a board in going out and whether it's with the city commission or the road commission, county commission, you know, or you know, the tribe, you know, we're constantly getting that input and bringing it back to the board. So I'd say we're really in compliance on this in most ways. But like I said earlier, I'd like to have a bit more targeted specificity in some of the goals that we set up. And that would coincide with our budget items as well, so that we actually have money set aside for those specific items to move forward for that specific year, you know. So, and I think that our contact with the residents is solid. I mean, I feel that the linkage with the owners, you know, with the residents, I mean, I'm always hearing things from folks and trying to bring it back here to the board and assessing and dialoguing. So I'd say we're in pretty good compliance with this policy.
Lisa, would you like to interject at all?
I put that we are in compliance with this one. This is the one we're most in compliance with, I think. I agree with Tim and Norm.
All right. Bill?
Well, I was gonna echo what Tim and Norm both said too. I mean, I was just looking for the list of goals that we established when we first got on the board, and I think it'd be nice to bring some of those up, put them on the agenda. I mean, one thing I'd really like to see, and I don't know if we're ever gonna talk about it. I mean, I've always talked, I thought it'd be cool to see a trail go from like O'Connor over to the subdivision. Oh, okay, thanks, Joe.
I was gonna say it was in an email.
But anyways, and then come down from Pickard to High Street, M20, where it could connect, you know, 2 or 3 subdivisions here, come in behind the road commission, go into the 2 senior citizen centers, where some kind of path that they could come, and like there's ball games going on out here right now, you know?
Didn't
Just,
Phil say something about like the pathways and sidewalk committee, we're gonna work on that? I thought,
well, he
it
had
was a couple
mentioned
meetings
that
ago.
Mm-hmm.
was looking for ideas,
Yeah.
you know? But we have, you know, it'd be nice maybe to get some kind of a park down on the south side of town, or the south side of our township, over by Phil. You know, somewhere over in there.
With a new voting location, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Just
we
use
need
Phil's
another one.
house too. How big's your backyard?
Big enough.
There you go. We could probably get you a tax abatement on that too.
But as far as agenda goes, I agree with what Tim said. It doesn't seem like, I don't know, don't really have much input on.
I was looking at the subject of our agenda planning, and pardon me, I just assumed that pause you were finished. I didn't mean to-
I was giving that back to him.
And so I think it's good, Tim, that you made time out of your work schedule to attend that policy governance boot camp put on by the MTA in the next couple of days. That would be great.
You have a good employer.
Yeah, you have a good employer, and you know, you always are bringing back good information from the meetings you attend, so I expect much of the same to come from that. When it comes to this agenda planning, I think we're having a great opportunity coming up on April 30th when we have that public meeting over at Jameson Hall. You know, we'll have an opportunity to talk to ownership, citizens, and get some input on other issues that may or may not be out there. So I think I saw that as a great opportunity to fulfill some of the needs that we had when we discussed our policy governance performance and communicating with the public and getting feedback. So I'm really looking forward to that meeting. You know, I am really excited about hearing from futurists. I think that if we could make that happen, if we could, and the word futurist, presentations from futurists is involved in our stated policy here, I think it would really help us all to look farther down the road. I know, Ben, you have always talked about, let's look ahead, let's look ahead and do some planning, and that's really how I interpret this agenda planning. It's not so much what's gonna be on our second and fourth Wednesday meeting agenda. I think this word agenda planning is in a bigger picture, much like you're talking about what's gonna happen in the future. And that's so important. I mean, things are changing. Of course, national and world issues are changing that impact us today. And if we had some futurists come and present some looks at the future and what's coming down the road, because you know, we've been through the past and we know it and we see what's going on right now, but if we had an idea of what's coming down the pike, of course nobody has a crystal ball, but if we had some ideas of what's coming down the pike, it might help us focus on our agenda planning.
If I could just piggyback on that, what I would hope to see is that we could get better attendance at open houses, at public meetings. You know, people are busy, and you know, but when we had the master plan, when we do our zoning ordinances, you know, when we've had site plan reviews, variances, people don't come in. But the other side of the coin is that I feel that we were elected by the voters for us to be their voice, for us to come in and represent their needs. And that being said, I think that they rely heavily on us to do our due diligence, to determine what is the adequate needs assessment, what is the right direction for the future of the community. You know, we got voted for that. So on one hand, it'd be nice to get more of that input, but I think that we were voted in to be the spokespeople for the folks who want change and how they want to see the community. So if there's a way to maybe promote more of the open house and get more attendance, but the attendance is you know, limited at best every time we have something like this. So I tend to think that the folks that elected us are looking to us to make the decisions, for us to make these hard calls and to look at the future and to make those decisions. So that's how I look at it. And part of that I get just by talking to people in the community. When I hear some certain things, looking at the goals. What are people asking for, bringing those goals back. It was sort of like with the roads, this 2 miles of roads. That wasn't just picking out, these are 5 projects that we'll decide to do. I had talked to folks about the roads, as Bill did too, and people were expressing the need to have those places gravelled. That's owner linkage, and I think that's what we're hired in for, to do for the public. So I'm not sure you're going to get a whole lot of folks coming in here for open houses and stuff. I don't think people have the time, or perhaps even the interest. And maybe it's not even the interest. They just don't have the time to do some of these things. So,
Norm, I like your idea about getting more linkage and recognizing that oftentimes the seats here are empty in the audience section of this room for our board meetings. But I think one way to expand that communication would be to let more and more people know, more of our citizens know about the streaming, how these meetings are streaming. And I don't know if our planning commission meetings are streaming, and by streaming I mean live through the internet as it happens. People can view it. And I've read about townships that have had town hall meetings where there'd only be a few humans sitting here at the table, but I shouldn't have said humans, but I mean a few people sitting at the table, as opposed to robots, I guess. But a few, just a few representatives sitting live at a table, and it was streaming, and they were communicating and getting feedback from people. Because
People can
the
comment
one
on the
thing
video.
that I see going on, and not only in my own life, but in friends and family, is it's just a heck of a lot easier to stream into something from my home, from my kitchen table, than to actually get in my car, drive across town, travel, fight traffic, even sit next to somebody I don't want to be close to. But I could get that information and communicate that way. So that's like using current technology that's available to us. Technology is so important. I'm going to, in 10 seconds, I'll get off my bandwagon.
You're doing good.
Look at what other organizations do to draw people in, and I think we could find some possibilities for us.
Yeah. And I think ultimately the citizens are bestowing and entrusting us with the responsibility to follow our global ends. When we talk about global ends being the safety, well-being, health, environment, commerce, prosperity of our community, that's what we're entrusted to do. And and I think that the more we we're involved in the community and just hear these things, the more we bring these things back. And again, going back to what I said earlier, I like the idea of having specificity of goals, because it gets, and that might even be something that gets people to come in. Because when people do come in, there's something very specific that's affecting their neck of the woods in their lives. And that's what brings them in. And we've had moments like that too. But I'd like to see people not just come in because they're upset about something, but come in because they really want to see us moving forward in a positive manner. That would be great, So.
We talked about a township newsletter. There used to be a township newsletter, even if it's a quarterly one would be nice. I know we talked about doing that, but we've never implemented it. We've never talked about it since we did our goals.
Yeah.
It doesn't have necessarily be an old school piece of paper you mail either. I mean, it can be an online newsletter right on our website, or if we created a social networking page. I mean, other municipalities have social networking pages. But I think also, I know my wife complained to me about how hard it was to link from our meeting off of our web page. There's no YouTube link. It's still the Mac link, and it's antiquated. I mean, our whole website's antiquated. Let's face it. It's really difficult to navigate that, and it should be easier. I mean, 'cause I don't think everybody knows that they can just go to YouTube and just type in the search, Union Township Board of Trustees, and link right up. And I think that we haven't done a very good job of promoting that, I think at least. And I do agree with what everybody has said from the standpoint that I think it was last year in February, I think I put on the agenda goals and objectives item on the agenda. And it goes right in line. Yes, sir, just 1 second. And it goes kind of right in line with what we are discussing is that, you know, we should have that yearly, annually sit down and say, you know, what do we want to see? What do we want to change? What do we want to do? Phil, yes.
I've experienced the good and the bad about linking, going to the streaming, our live streaming, as well as the archives of our meetings, 2 different ways. If you go from your PC to our website, it's easy peasy to get to it, and also when you go to the Mac TV place where the archives are held. But if you try it from your phone, it's not good, and that's not our website's problem. That's Mac TV's interfacing. They just don't have a good mobile application for that, and that's where the work needs to be. That's where it needs to be fixed. It's not us.
Yeah, but it's like
It's our
iPad.
partner.
iPad's really hard.
I know, but I just want
PC
you
is
to
what
understand what
works
I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, no
please.
question.
That
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
the Union Township site. It's not what we're doing. It's what another third party is doing. So if you were just to clarify that, it would make me feel better.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I do think our webpage, though, it could use an upgrade, an update. It's been a long time since it's been updated. So that's my opinion. So I allowed you to have an opinion, and that's my opinion. Kim, would you like to interject?
One of the things that I would like to see is more educational, you know, people going to more of these educational things, like MTA puts out all of their trainings and that kind of thing. I just think, you know, the more we learn about things, the better it is, and better for everybody. I also think that, you know, I agree with a lot of you guys. You know, we're doing pretty good in the planning area here. But yeah.
All right. Any more comments on our new business item? Item A, agenda plan. All right, let's close that and let's move on to extended public comment. This is going to be 5 minutes regarding any issue. Seeing nobody rushing to the podium, we close that and we move on to item 12, which would be manager's comments. Mark?
Thank you. I do have a few tonight. It was referenced a few minutes ago, there's a public information meeting. It's going to be held actually here at the Township Hall on April 30th, and that is to receive public input on design considerations as it relates to Jamison Park, both the outdoor and indoor, the building and outdoor. That's at 5:30, and that's that project is being spearheaded by EDA and at least some preliminary funding by EDA. We have, we'll be sending out the flyer that I believe I sent all you. We'll be sending that out to all the, mailing it to all the area property owners that live around Jamison Park, both commercial and residential. We'll be putting that posting in the newspaper, trying to get the word out. And of course, it's on our website as well. I also sent it out to every board member, whether it's Planning Commission or ZBA, trying to get some input there. Related to the parks, the bathrooms opened up last week at McDonald and Jamison Park. We have expanded our capability to receive payments online to include building permits and land use application fees, those kind of things. We have been able to receive tax payments and utility payments online, so that convenience has been expanded. It was mentioned already about the EDA's annual support to MMDC. We're looking for seasonal part-time employees this time of year. We have had ads out. Employment is, finding employees is really difficult no matter what the job is, from a seasonal part-timer all the way up to a professional, CEO, whatever you want to. The whole employment is very tight. A reminder to respond to the RSVP request for the leadership luncheon, the annual leadership luncheon that's held. It'll be May 17th this year at noon, and I think you all received something that we asked to. We need to count. Those invitations have gone out to CMU folks, tribe, county, elected officials, city. I don't think I'm missing any there, along with, of course, Union Township. Did want to inform you that on April 15th, so it's been since our last board meeting, that some work was being done out on the Broomfield property next to your location, actually, and they damaged a wellhead. That property is serviced by a well right now.
Okay.
So they damaged a wellhead, and one of the businesses there, CMS, I think it's in the red building, was without water. We do not have water service, the township, even though that's township property. We don't have service out to there. So what would normally have to be done is a franchise agreement, which you're all familiar with. And what I did was gave the approved an emergency hookup for that business to hook into the city water main, and the franchise paperwork will come later. I would anticipate it'd be probably at one of the May meetings. So I did want to let you know that we do have a township property hooked up to city water without a franchise agreement, but I felt it was
I think it's
in
more.
the interest.
Are they going to bore? Are they going to tear the road open again?
I don't know how they're going to do it.
Okay.
So I want to let you know that. And then lastly, pleased to announce that Teresa Ward, we've been trying to fill the position of assessing general property tax specialist position for the last couple months. That position's been filled, been accepted by Miss Teresa Ward. She starts May 1st, which is a week from today. So that's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Mark at all? Oh.
Mark,
All right. Yep.
And I'm sorry,
Yep.
I do have one
Mhm.
question. In your report of activities from other departments, all departments, there was one mention about in the public works area switching a light to LED light. I thought that was a very good thing to do, because we all know the value of LED lights and energy conservation and reduced pollution. Is that part of a plan that we're going to be converting over to LED lights when lights have problems?
We're conscious of the conversion. I can't say that there's a plan in writing that we're executing. Although maybe 4 years ago, there was a study done here at the township, energy use and opportunities to save energy. And one of the items that was mentioned was moving to LED and changing some of the switching to motion sensor. So we have that report. I guess you could say we're trying to execute that, but when opportunities come up, we are.
Thanks.
Part of this building has motion sensors in it, part of it does not.
Great, thanks.
Okay, let's close manager comments, move on to final board comments. Tim, you want to start it off?
Sure. So, getting back to the manager's monthly activity report, I find this to be very helpful. As Ben had mentioned before in the past, it's very long. But there is so much information on there. It gives us a chance to look at what the prior month activity is, what this month has going on. And maybe I missed it because there's a lot of bullet points here. The township manager and staff do a tremendous amount of work. It's unbelievable what goes on to manage and operate a township. One thing I didn't see in there though for like under future board things was the thing I brought up about assuring that we have discussion about, have speakers in, so we are positioned in a knowledge-based situation as the marijuana questions continue to come up. So I truly hope we have many opportunities to get well versed in that arena. And another thing which may be being worked on, I'm not even sure if it'd be more in the zoning, planning type arena, but I remember a while ago we had a developer come and, if I recall right, the premise of their business was business office, and anything ancillary pretty much goes with that. And to me at that point in time it seemed like the activities that were ancillary were more substantial truly than the business office portion of that. And I just thought that was, whether it's a ordinance, a policy, a zoning issue, a planning issue, that I would like to have that as an item of investigation. Whether that's at the board level, manager's level, to look into and bring information back. But at that point in time, that was an important issue, I thought.
Yeah, Tim, if I might, Ben, just, I have the same interest in finding out more about the status of that. Is that activity you're referring to being allowed because of an agreement we have, or just not being enforced? And so if we could have a report from the manager on what's going on there, and is it okay or not okay? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not clear if it's a state-driven thing or if it's a township rule or policy that we have drafted and we abide by it, but maybe it needs to be looked at for modification. So yes, I could use help in understanding really where that sits and what it's about.
I'm kind of confused. What
Can I probe into that? I'm not sure
Confusion on it.
what we're talking about either.
I know, we're all like,
Oh.
what is he talking about?
Well,
You said a
we had
business making.
well,
It's trying to be
and I think there's
a little less specific, that's all.
right. If a person comes forward and wants to create a business, and they have a business office, there's quite a wide spectrum that is allowed to go along with the business office, as long as the activities are considered ancillary activities to the business office.
Okay, so that's a zoning code issue. We have primary use and we have accessory use, and they're defined in the zoning code by zoning district. And that isn't a topic that is being addressed in the zoning code rewrite to try to better define what those are. I mean, we have primary uses, we have special uses, we have accessory uses, and our zoning code from the mid-90s or whatever needs a little bit of tightening. So that will be addressed in the from a overall perspective, from a zoning code rewrite, and you'll have opportunities for input onto that because you eventually approve the zoning ordinance. if you're referring instead to a particular operation that's actually going on out there and a current accessory use, and you're wondering from an enforcement perspective if that's legitimate, in order for me to look into that, whether it's here or some other venue, I just need to know where to look.
I had no specific, I guess to sum it up like you're saying, as we review our ordinances, hopefully that's going on because we talked about it. We need to
It is, and it is part of the zoning code, not the general ordinances.
Yes.
You know,
So
and
thanks for helping me with
And
that.
that would
Sorry
be
for
the-
not being
No,
clear
The
and
sign
more
ordinance would be also
specific.
part of that too,
Right.
right, the zoning.
Oh, here,
regarding-
Ken, what you
Mark.
can-
Yes.
but then,
Because we got some loopholes there too, we gotta tie up too.
well, you know, I think.
I don't recall if the sign ordinance is a part of the general ordinance or the zoning, actually.
'Cause
Right
I-
now, what's being addressed is the zoning code.
I think that was
rewrite.
added to the zoning, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
But, you
so.
know, the planning commission, you know, did a wonderful job a year and a half ago now on the master plan, and that really took a lot of time and energy to re-put that together. I'm trusting that the planning commission, with the people that we have on the planning commission, are going to be really good in terms of looking at all the things you're describing. I mean, you're talking about 1990 was the last major rewrite of it. There's been a lot of add-ons along the way. But I trust that the planning commission is going to do a
Yeah.
really diligent job on revamping this. And they're not just looking at, you know, in general terms, they're looking very specific, going to each item and seeing what they need to do to fix it, so, and rewrite it. So I think it's going to address, Tim, some of the concerns as well that you might have, you know. Times have changed. I mean, we're talking how many years later, you know, so.
And there's other things like the signing ordinance, if you take a building and you break it up into condominiums, then you're able to put a freestanding sign. So you could essentially have one building with 10 freestanding signs if it's broken up into 10, which
Mhm.
is another, you know, nuance from
Right.
probably that wasn't expected in 1990, right?
Right.
Let's see. We're
I'll
kind of,
continue
it's been a
on.
long conversation, but yeah, go ahead.
So, that's two of my many notes I had down. Also, there was some initial discussion going on about potential thinning of Pickard. Is that how
Yeah.
it was stated?
Right.
And I've only seen a few
Oh,
comments.
The road diet? we're talking
The
about?
road diet.
Road
Yeah,
diet, yeah.
Pickard road diet.
I like that expression,
And-
road
and,
diet.
It seemed like most things were slanted towards not so much in favor of it.
Mhm.
Without great investigation, you know, I think personally it's a good idea. I've been in areas, newer city developments and things, and currently we have 2 lanes going each way. And when somebody decides they wanna make a left turn, that can be very problematic. So when you get a lane going each way that's gonna flow well with a turn lane, that takes out some safety risk when people decide to make a quick left turn. And then also, the ability to create another transportation mode on that same piece of geography. I think it just opens up a better roadway, a safer roadway, and a roadway that can service more modes of transportation.
I think the negative comments were coming from people because they were thinking the Mission Street to the expressway portion, and I don't believe that's correct. I think it's essentially from Bradley to Mission, I think, is what they were talking about in that. Because you already got turn lane, obviously, on the other side, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows out there that I didn't, we don't have a reporter here, do we? After reading the comments on that article, I don't want to be involved with it right now.
So from my limited
yeah.
knowledge, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. And last but least, weather's great. Lots of opportunities in our region for folks to get out and play. All parks are open. Township parks, county parks, city parks, the dog park, Chippewa River, the campgrounds. Lots of great brochures can be had. from the county building, giving information on the rivers, the Pure Marquette Trailway. There's great opportunity for citizens to get out and enjoy.
All right, thank you, Tim.
You're
Phil, have you had a chance to do your comment yet?
I
lost
did,
track.
I interrupted Tim, but also,
This
This is the
it's
longest
pretty-
comment period
yeah,
I've
I was gonna say.
ever seen.
Yeah.
I think
Wow.
half an hour so far.
Wow.
no, I have nothing more to add.
Okay. Bill?
I'll save it for later.
Okay. Let's stagger back here. Lisa, I don't want to forget about you.
It was good.
Okay. And then Norm, you've already,
I have none.
you've spoke your mind.
I
Okay.
have none.
Kim,
I'm good.
you're good? I did talk with one of our businesses in Union Township that was affected greatly by the bridge project on Lincoln, and is going to be affected by this project also, and that's Mike Anderson, who owns the canoe livery. And he did tell me that the road commission is going to try to complete his section of that road first, and then move on to the next, so he can somehow maintain, because I mean, it's pretty tough when you're seasonal, and then to have nobody be able to get to you, right? I mean, I've been through that one, and you got a short period of time to make money, so I'm very happy that they've accommodated him and trying to help him through this process, because it's gonna be tough for him. That's, losing that access from the south is, in his business, is gonna be difficult, because the students would come from that direction. The only thing I did want to mention is I did send everybody a thought that I had, and we don't have to discuss it tonight, but I just want to make sure that you kind of put it in the back of your minds, is that at the League of Women Voters reception here a couple of weeks ago, I did have a chance. I was talking with Will Joseph and Kathy Ling, who were present, and you know, I'd brought up before, and I was unaware, and Phil, you had brought it up to me, is that, you know, a lot of communities that in the country now are banning single-use plastic bags, along with plastic straws, obviously. You see it along the coastlines, but you're seeing it in a lot of progressive communities. And I had brought it up as a thought, and you'd mentioned that the state had, the Senate and House had actually passed a bill. So I did look it up, and I handed it to you folks, or sent it to you, and you know, it was kind of a funny deal, because it was like a 12/28/2016, and the governor wasn't even present. It was signed by the lieutenant governor, because the governor was on vacation. And it just seems odd to me that something that was that important, that the governor would not have been the person to sign the bill. When we go on Bluegrass, and I sent some pictures also, is that open field between Dick's Sporting Goods and Members First Credit Union is just packed with garbage, but the garbage is single-use plastic bags, almost singly. There must be hundreds of them in that field, and it's just really disappointing. It reminded me of driving by a landfill, is what it looked like. And you know, the statistics that I found is that out of the trillion bags annually that are produced for that purpose, only 10% are reused, 90% are discarded. You know, and you operate a recycling facility, and the scourge of those recycling facilities is when people put those single-use plastic bags into the ICRC bins, for instance, because they clog up the equipment, correct?
Yes.
It's a terrible thing. And to me, that the state, through the encouragement of a lobbyist group, would make that law in effect, with really the general public having no idea that this even exists. How many of you knew, besides Phil, and we had brought it up, that there was a law that actually existed like this? And as you go through and you Google it, and you look at national publications, and it was more like, you won't believe this, but look what Michigan did. And you know, here we're surrounded by the world's largest freshwater, you know, reservoir, and we have something that's a real problem that, you know, even coastal communities, Holland, Traverse City, Grand Haven, you know, I mean, you'd think that they would have the ability, being so close to the water, to be able to minimize, you know, or ban their use of these things, because all these grocery stores all have paper bags. And most of us, when we go to the grocery store, probably have our reusable bags that we take anyway, right? So what I discussed with them was, what is the city commission's temperature on the possibility of doing a joint resolution with Union Township and sending it to the Senate and the House, basically stating that we feel it should be our right to be able to make that decision ourselves based on our community. You know, when I looked at that open field on Bluegrass, I mean, it was just horrible. And when you have a chance to take a look at that, I mean, you saw the pictures, but the pictures don't do it justice, because there's bags. I got out of my vehicle, walked into the field, and there's garbage bags, there's these bags matted down even further. I mean, it was just awful. And I think that my thought is if we were proactive on this matter, and we took it, number one, it's one of our things is working with other jurisdictions. And Kathy and Will were going to address that with their board. And I wanted to address it with you for a future agenda possibly. It is to come up with resolutions, send it to the state houses, and then maybe other municipalities, you know, follow suit, because it all has to start somewhere, right? I mean, all this stuff, the movements have to start somewhere. But I don't feel that this is political. I think this is environmental. I think that it affects our community. We have river that flows through here. How many times do you drive down Lincoln Road and look at the sacks stuck in the branches in the river? Those rivers eventually empty up into our lakes. And so I think that it's important for us to let the state know that this is something that should be a local decision, not a state decision. So, you know, again, think about it. Like I said, I think it's got merit. I think it would send a message to Lansing, and I would hope that other communities maybe hear about what we did and think, you know what, we'd like to do the same thing, because this should be a local decision. So, off my soapbox.
I'm going to piggyback on that.
Yeah.
I think consumers and corporations who are cognizant of, you know, the damage that we do to the environment are getting on board. I know there's drinking straw manufacturers that are becoming new and very growing as they're developing biodegradable straws and things. And some areas are banning the use of straws at a point in time in the near future. I was reading an article about the Aldi's grocery store group, which is a German-based company. They have a vision of eliminating packaging that is not going to be environmental friendly in the near future. So I think the younger, educated, in-tune citizens will be demanding that. Corporations will need to respond, so hopefully that will improve it. You see all sorts of things about the aquatic life and the inhabitant animals on Earth, you know, bound up, wrapped up, caught in plastic. It is horrific to see the damages that go on. In fact, there's a study about plastic dust being found in areas where there really is not plastic. This dust is created, it travels. Aquatic life is eating plastic beads and things. So there is a real problem with plastic. In the 50s, it was a great thing. You used to have a dish, you dropped it, it broke. Plastic came along, it sustained. Didn't think much about, well, it sustains for hundreds of years. So hopefully the world is seeing a little bit and learning a little bit, going to improve.
And, you know, it takes effort. You know, at my store, we I don't have anything in my store that isn't glass or biodegradable. I eliminated everything out of there over a year ago. The only thing it has to improve, and Phil, maybe, something you might know more about is commercial composting, because I think that's gonna be a big thing. Because you do have plastic now that's made out of corn. It's a number 7 PLA plastic, and we've switched all of our plastic items over to that, but it needs to have a commercial composting, which is kind of heat and moisture. But it biodegrades in 6 months down to nothing, which is corn sugar. And so, I think that there's things out there, but I think, when we have our RCRC facility, maybe that's something in the future that they'll be adding, and maybe it's your facility that you manage. That's maybe something down the road is this commercial composting thought process. But so again, think about it on where you people would stand on that type of resolution. But I don't see how it hurts anything, and I think that it sends a message, and maybe that message gets heard and it grows.
Comes
So.
down to personal responsibility too.
Mhm.
I mean, you go to Meijer, dirty diapers out in the parking lot, Sleeping Bear sand dunes, where'd all the glass come from? They were just talking about that on the news the other night. Somebody dumped the glass out there, and now they gotta go around and spend 6 weeks, they figured, picking glass up. I mean, it's ridiculous, the stuff people do.
Yep, exactly. So, yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right, so we have a
Support.
second?
Support.
Norm supported.
All right, so all in favor of closing this session of the Union Township Board of Trustees dated April 24th, 2019, that started at 7 o'clock p.m. and would be ending at 8:41 p.m., say aye.
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 I think we should take a roll call.